We have lots to discuss here in today's video, including lots of trade talk around a variety of teams, including the Montreal Canadiens. We have a couple of notes on the Habs, including it seems like the narrative around Patrik Laine and his future in Montreal is completely flipped. We'll discuss the latest updates from Eric Engels of Sportsnet and what he has to say about Laine's future. Plus, could the Habs and Bruins maybe hook up on a potential trade? There is a potential centerman on the Bruins that might have interest and connections to the Habs. We'll discuss how that might work out. Plus, we also have some trade talk as well around Yakir in the Columbus Blue Jackets. Some updates there. Plus, the future of Jean-Gabriel Pageau with the Islanders. Could he be a target for the Canucks? And what might, kind of convince the Islanders to make that move? Plus, we have all kinds of other injury updates from yesterday and last night's action, and of course from today as well. And we almost had a goalie fight last night between Allred and Laine, and we'll discuss how things came unglued between the Sens and the Caps coming up next. So welcome back to another video here at Top Shelf Hockey. As I mentioned, we have lots to discuss here in today's video. All kinds of NHL trade talk and rumors to take a look at. Some injury updates. We've had a lot to go over here in the last 24 to 48 hours between Saturday night's games and, of course, some of the games from earlier today on Sunday. Some updates on roster moves. First up, the Devils have recalled defenseman Seamus Casey. So that's good. Of course, we know he recently went down after recovering from injury. But unfortunately, the Devils today, and they are on a heater right now. They're rolling pretty strong. I think it's, eight games in a row, I think it is now. But they lost Brett Pesce. Brett Pesce was injured. He left the game, did not return after blocking a shot from, I believe it was Brent Burns of the Avalanche. So that's not good news. So it's looking like he is going to miss time, but we don't have any kind of updates officially from the team. Just that Sheldon Keefe just said that it wasn't good and that he would miss time, but how much is unclear right now. Where the Devils are going so strong, the last thing they need is to start getting into injury trouble. But of course, they've already had some of that, and they're doing okay for the most part. Of course, they're hoping to get Markstrom back here very shortly as well. The Bruins today officially placed defenseman Hampus Lindholm on injured reserve, so he'll be out for a period of time. We discussed just in the last couple of days him getting hurt. They've recalled Jonathan Aspero to take his roster spot. The Penguins are going to be without Rakell for 6 to 8 weeks after suffering a broken hand. Of course, Rakell is a player we've talked about in the recent days and off and on throughout the last several weeks and months about being a fairly high-level trade target for many NHL teams, including a potential target for the Hurricanes that we talked about just yesterday, how the Hurricanes were kind of linked to watching some of the top six forwards with the Penguins, including Rakell and Brian Rust, both being potential targets for them down the road. Of course, he won't be probably mentioned as much here coming up, given his injury status now. It's not going to make things any easier for the Penguins to move him. We know the Penguins have been playing relatively well early in the season, but I still believe Kyle Dubas is not oblivious to the fact that it's unlikely to last, and he still needs to do what's right for the future of the club long term. So we're still going to see veterans moved out, I think, even no matter how well they do. But I do think at some point they're going to kind of come back down to earth here and kind of level out with their wins and losses a little bit, but they have had a good start, which I'm sure makes guys like Crosby and Malkin happy to be part of a winning club, at least for the time being. So we'll see about that. The Maple Leafs had recalled goaltender Dennis Hildeby for their game yesterday. He's been now sent back to the American Hockey League. They just recalled him so that they could give Anthony Stolarz a full, complete day off. They put Primo between the pipes. Hildeby was there to back up. But Stolarz has had to carry the bulk of the workload, given that Joseph Wall's been away from the team. So they wanted to give him a full day off. Wall has returned to the team, but of course he's missed an extended period of time, including part of training camp. So not quite clear exactly, how long he's going to have to be, skating, practicing, getting ready here before he gets between the pipes or even backs up. I would suspect to be a little bit, but hopefully not too long, so they can kind of get back to having the tandem that they were hoping to as well. Tonight as well, we've got the Oilers doing battle with the Canucks, and Captain Quinn Hughes of Vancouver is scheduled to miss that game, according to Canucks reporters are saying he is listed now as day-to-day dealing with some sort of injury. The Sharks might be without Adam Gaudette for a period of time as well. He, again, was another player left today's action. That was quite a comeback win. The San Jose Sharks actually had a really nice win in overtime. Macklin celebrating with the overtime winner against the Wild. It was a situation where the Wild had the puck for the bulk of overtime, and it just seemed like it was one of those scenarios where the Sharks might not ever touch the puck, but when they finally did, they were able to spring Celebrini, and he scored, and it was over. So it was a really nice goal. Celebrini's having a real nice start to the season. I know I had predicted that he would be doing well enough to get on Team Canada's radar and get on that Olympic team, and I think he's proven me right on that one. He's had a heck of a start there as well. As I mentioned in last night's action with the Sens and the Capitals, of course, the two battles, battle of the two nation capitals amongst the NHL franchises. Typically, they're not big rivals. They only play a few times a year, and the games are usually good the last few years. Usually close, entertaining, but generally you don't see a lot of rough stuff. But this one did have a fair bit of it, and almost had a goalie fight between Linus Ullmark and Charlie Lindgren. Now, it wasn't even so much a case of them trying to fight each other, but there was a big scrum that broke out around the Capitals' net. Charlie Lindgren was certainly getting into it with some of the Sens players, and they were kind of outnumbered because he was involved. So Linus Ullmark he leaves his crease, rushes down the ice, drops his stick, throws his blocker and glove, and jumps right into the frenzy there and gets involved, and we almost saw the goalies were basically fighting, but not necessarily with each other. But after the game, he said essentially it's not his nature, not his role to instigate anything, but he just kind of saw his guys being outnumbered, and he said he respects Lindgren as a goalie, knows him a little bit, and he just says if he's going to be involved and have an outnumbered situation, I got to get in there and defend my guys. And I'm sure the team absolutely loved that, especially in a situation where they're trying to get playing the right way and get going. They've now won a couple in a row, playing without Captain Brady Tkachuk, having guys like Ullmark start to play better and show that not only leadership off the ice, but on the ice like that, which you don't often see from goalies. It was fun to watch. It was just nice to see both teams kind of sticking up for each other. Of course, Tom Wilson kind of got things started with a big hit, open ice hit on Ridley Gregg earlier. He really laid him out. Now that one I thought was a clean check, but it was a big thunderous check. And then Senators responded not long after. They didn't go after Wilson, but Tyler Clevin absolutely laid out another big hard clean check against Ryan Leonard. And it just kind of raised the temperature in the game. And before you know it, you were starting to get more scrums and things like that. And then it just kind of, and plus, not only that, Lindgren was upset because of one of the goals, that was the Pinto goal, where he was pushed in. In my opinion, he was completely pushed in by Chychrun. But, obviously they crashed into the crease. Lindgren wasn't happy. The goal counted, so he got probably even angrier because of it. So his anger level was already raised, and then as the game went on, the Senators were routing the Caps with a 7-1 win, so it just kind of started getting, probably a little bit more agitated as things went on. But it was just a fun thing that you don't often see that the goalies. I wish they would just let the goalies go at it a little bit more, and the goalies both got penalties for their actions, but all in all, it was entertaining to watch nonetheless. Now, as I mentioned, a bunch of different trade scenarios we're going to take a look at here today. A couple involve the Canadiens, the Canucks being the two primary teams, but we do want to touch on Yegor Chinakhov in Columbus. TSN reporter Pierre LeBrun, NHL insider, and of course writer for The Athletic as well, had some updates on the Chinakhov situation with the Blue Jackets and what the Blue Jackets might be looking for. Now, we've heard basically since the offseason that Chinakhov had requested a trade. Don't think he was real thrilled with some of the decisions from head coach Dean Evason. He was healthy, scratched a bit, and it sounded like he really wanted just a better opportunity and wanted to get moved. Well, they didn't accommodate. It sounded like they were open to it. It's not that they completely shut it down. They just never found a deal they felt was good for them, so they didn't pull the trigger on it. They didn't rush. Don Waddell wasn't going to go out there and trade him just for the sake of trading him. He's like, we're going to find a deal that makes sense for us, and they did not. So in training camp, you heard Chinakhov talk to the media and say that he had a chance to talk to Dean Evason and kind of straighten out a few things. But then I'm not sure what they talked about or how those conversations went or exactly what was said, but it wasn't long that Chinakhov was a healthy scratch, and he's not playing a lot. And it just seems like he's kind of fallen out of favor there. So we know that there's that trade request. It wasn't rescinded. It just sounded like they were trying to smooth things over and kind of make it a little more comfortable. But then we're right back to where we were by the sounds of things. LeBrun's reporting that the Jackets, the part of what's the reason it's taking so long, they're not really willing to entertain a trade just for a draft pick here. They want a hockey trade. So they're looking for a similar aged roster player with a little bit of experience like Chinakhov. So until somebody comes calling with that sort of offer, they're likely not going to pull the trigger. I kind of wondered, and we've talked about this before, and there's even been some reporters that said that they had conversations, but what about Nick Robertson out of Toronto? I mean, he is in a similar situation. You know, he gets to play. His production hasn't always been there. Sometimes his minutes are down. He's been healthy scratched. We know he also had expressed desire to the Leafs about getting another opportunity. Again, I don't think either player is being real demanding and forceful, saying, trade me now, but it's a case where they both let their teams know that, you know, we would welcome a fresh start and new scenery. And at this point, neither player is yet to get it. And I've been wondering for a while if they could be the answer to each other's problems and get a swap, but we've yet to see that. So we'll see if that's something that maybe materializes later. But for now, we at least know that the return that Columbus is looking for, and they're not looking for futures. They want a younger, aged prospect or roster player, that's, you know, similar age and experience level to Chinakhov. Now, as I mentioned, we're going to talk next about the Bruins and Pavel Zacha, who's an interesting name that's going to be getting more and more attention around the trade talk here. Elliot Friedman was talking about Zacha on Saturday Headlines last night. He mentioned how the Canucks, we know that they've been a team that's been linked to this player. They've had some level of trade talk around this player on multiple occasions. We can date it back to last season. We can date it back again to the offseason. They've checked in. We don't know how far things have gone. Obviously not far enough to pull the trigger, but they've engaged multiple times. So it's expected here that the Canucks are quite likely going to be in play, trying to maybe do that again and see if they can't maybe finish the deal here. But according to Elliot Friedman, we know Zacha does have some trade protection in his contract, but he doesn't think that the Canucks are a team that he has blocked. So if the Canucks and the Bruins do pull off a trade, it should not need his consent, and it's something that could move forward. But we've heard another insider, former pal of Elliot at Sportsnet's Jeff Merrick, who now works for Daily Faceoff with his own program called The Sheet. Merrick was talking on his program that another team to watch for Pavel Zacha might just be the Montreal Canadiens. Now, here's the thing. The Habs and Bruins have been division rivals for a long time. It's rare that we see a trade between these teams. So because of that, maybe it makes it less likely. But we've also saw, and now it was a different scenario, but we never thought we'd saw a trade between the Bruins and Panthers either. And then Marchand was traded at the deadline last year. Now, he had full control and called his shot, and that did obviously play a big part in that deal going down. But moral is here is that sometimes teams do hook up when you don't expect it. Now, of course, if the Bruins, who we know they don't have a great record to start the year, if they kind of accept the fate that last year wasn't a fluke, that maybe they need to reconsider, make some changes or further changes than they already have, then, maybe they won't care about trading within the division, because ultimately if they feel if it's, a deal that makes them better long-term, maybe they pull off that trade. Now, Montreal is rich in prospects and draft capital, so they have probably as much or more than anybody around the league that they can offer to teams if they're talking trade to make it interesting. So, the other connection here too is that Ken Hughes is the former agent of Pavel Zacha. He's repped him before. So they know each other. He knows this player. So there could be, some appeal that way from the player perspective to go with a familiar name, face, and relationship. And we know that the Montreal Canadiens are still very likely to add a centerman, or at least to try to. We know that they obviously Kirby Dach was the big question mark going into the season. He's still, I think, going to get more of an opportunity. He's, had missed some time here lately, but I don't know that they're completely sold right now. That he's, they have to have some insurance. Not saying Dach necessarily gets traded. Maybe he does, maybe he doesn't. But even if he doesn't, maybe it's a scenario where they bring in another center. Maybe Dach goes to the wing. Maybe he plays lower in the lineup. Again, he's had a lot of injuries the last couple of years. I've seen a few flashes from him this year that I'm like, okay, wow, you know what? Maybe he is the answer. But then there's times when you're like, okay, well, maybe he's not. So, I know from my perspective at least, it's hard to be completely sold that long-term that he's the answer there. So I can see as this year goes on, they've had a good start. If they want to make the playoffs again, which we know that they do, and they do seem like at this point that they're very well could be capable of that they're going to want to get stronger, and Zacha could be a good fit there. So we'll see. Again, No guarantee that he's the guy, but there is some connections there. In between Montreal and Vancouver, they could be landing spots for him should the Bruins pull the trigger on that front. Now, another name to watch out of Vancouver just might be Islanders center Jean-Gabriel Pageau. Now, Jeff Marek talked about this, as well as Dave Pagnotta, talking about, well, Pagnotta's comments on Pageau was that the Islanders are willing to listen on Pageau right now, but it's not something they feel rushed or inclined to get to here right away. Obviously, it's early in the season. I think, it's quite likely he gets moved before the trade deadline. I think it's probably unlikely that he gets re-signed. Given the direction of the team, he's on an expiring contract. Makes sense that they go in a different direction beyond the season. But how quickly that happens, like Pagnotta said, and I agree with him, doesn't mean they have to trade him today, next week, or tomorrow, or anything like that. But, it could be more likely later in the season, closer to the deadline in the second half. However, Jeff Marek made a very interesting comment, and I've said this before as well, so I completely agree with Marek's take on it, is that the future of Jean-Gabriel Pageau could very well be heavily dictated by the development and progress of young Cal Ritchie. Of course, Cal Ritchie came over to the Islanders from the Avalanche in the Brock Nelson trade, and to me, he looks like he could be a big part of the Islanders' future. He's developing quite nicely, playing in the American Hockey League, and has been really good at that level. So it's only a matter of time before the Islanders brass feels like Ritchie is ready for a full-time, longer look at the NHL. Now, they have no need at this point to rush him at all. The longer they let him kind of gain experience, get some seasoning, play big minutes in all situations down there, I think will only benefit him long term. So there's no real benefit to rush. But if we get to, November, December, and Ritchie keeps chugging along, playing a good role down there, depending on how the health of the Islanders forward group stays, I could see a scenario where the Islanders may feel comfortable moving Pageau ahead of the deadline and promoting Ritchie. At that point, essentially, I think it's pretty fair to say that Ritchie will be the Pageau replacement. I think long-term, Ritchie has higher upside than Pageau does. He figures to be, at the very least, a number 2 center. He might be a number 1. I don't know if they know that yet. He's going to be, I think, he projects to be a player similar. I'm not saying he's going to live up to the hype here, but a Patrice Bergeron type. That's my opinion of Ritchie. So whether that's a 1 or a 2 kind of depends on who else is playing with him on that team. So ultimately, the better he does and the better he progresses and develops, the sooner they're going to be willing to move Pageau. And again, if Zacha's not the guy in Vancouver, could Pageau be a guy? Now, I guess it depends on the state of the Canucks. I'm not convinced at this point that the Canucks are going to be a playoff team, so they may not add a player that's got, an expiring contract, unless they feel like extending him is a good play and that it makes sense, right? That's why Zacha is also on a different scenario, because he's got a year left on his deal. He's not a pending UFA. So it's not just a one-and-done rental situation. So Vancouver's not going to pay assets for a rental. All right, they would only, I think, get Pageau if they're trending towards being a playoff team. Okay, maybe it makes sense as long as the price isn't too big. Otherwise, it doesn't make sense unless they want to re-sign him, which I'm not completely sure that makes the most sense either. So we'll see. But I do agree on Marek's take on from the Islanders' perspective. Whether or not he turns out to be a target for the Canucks, we'll see. I think Zacha might make more sense, but again, hard to say what the price tag is and if they can make that work. They do have some prospects that they might part with, but I don't know. If I'm Vancouver, I recommend they be awfully careful, because I think there's more question marks on that team than some might want to admit right now. Now, Cook update on Nazem Kadri. We've heard his name in the rumor mill lately. Of course, the Flames have had a very bad start to the season. They did pick up a win today, which was nice to see. They beat the Rangers. The Rangers are struggling as well. Team that the Rangers just can't seem to put the puck in the net. But Kadri's a player who's been picking up his play here, getting some attention. Stanley Cup winner, good amount of experience, solid top 6 centerman, good production, good in a variety of situations. and teams are going to be calling Calgary and Kadri, there's no doubt. He does have some control over where he goes if he is moved. He did have a no-move clause before. That's downgraded now to a modified no-trade. I think there's a 13-team list that he's got on his contract. So ultimately, one thing that Elliotte Friedman talked about Kadri, though, in the headline segment last night on Hockey Night in Canada was, if a Kadri trade's going to happen, it's not going to come like super quick. He said there's no way at all that he is traded before he plays his game number 1,000, and which isn't not a lot far away. With the Flames, he would do that as a Calgary Flame in the next, I don't have their schedule right in front of me, but within a week to 10 days, 2 weeks at most. I think I don't have his stats right in front of me, but I know he's under 10 games away or something like that from hitting that big milestone. So clearly, he's been in Calgary a few years now, signed long term. He's going to want to do that there. They're going to want to have him hit that there. And really, I don't think anybody's out there thinking Kadri's going to get traded tomorrow, next week, anything anyway. I think it'd be later in the year because, again, if you're going to trade for a player with term, you're going to want to be sure that your season's trending in the right direction. So that's why I think teams are going to want to get to like the 20-25 game mark at the very least before they pull the trigger. But will it be interest in Kadri? There's no doubt teams are going to call. They're probably going to ask about Michael Backlund. They're probably going to ask about Blake Coleman. We know Rasmus Anderson is the most likely candidate in that group to get moved, but there's others that are going to generate interest as well, including Kadri. But, again, just to be clear, nobody thinks he's getting traded today, tomorrow, next week. But, once we're, another month or two down the road, I think all bets are off. We'll see how things go. Now, the big update as well is the tune on Laine's future in Montreal seems to have completely flipped. We know last year he got injured in the preseason, came on, scored 20 goals, a lot of which were on the power play. I know Habs fans were absolutely loving the Laine addition. They didn't have to give up huge assets to get him. They traded Jordan Harris. Was part of that package to bring Laine to Montreal. He was saying that he was rejuvenated, loving hockey again after having some downtime. And now, as much as everybody thought he had a long future in Habs organization, now suddenly we're like, oh, maybe not so sure. I mean, the season did not start the greatest for Laine. Obviously, slow start. It wasn't long before he was sent down on the lower part of the lineup. We've heard Marty St. Louis make comments about, his pace and the way he was playing. And then now he's out. We talked about in the last day or two here, I think it was yesterday, about Laine now being out for about 4 months with a core muscle injury that required surgery. So now Eric Engels of Sportsnet, his latest report suggests that, not only is Laine out for 3 to 4 months, but suddenly his whole future with the team is questionable at best. Instead of talking about him having a long future and probably signing an extension, now the reporters are wondering if when he comes back, could his days be numbered and could he be a piece to use to trade by the trade deadline to kind of try to make this team ready for playoffs? I don't know how easy that's going to be. He makes a lot of money. He's a pending UFA. And of course, he's going to be off back-to-back injury-riddled seasons. Yes, there was a stretch of time in Montreal last year when he was on fire at the power play. But you take that away, 5-on-5 numbers, not so great. His pace isn't great. The injuries are adding up. Who's taking Laine? You know what I mean? Like, that's a lot of dough, even with retention on Montreal side. I mean, I understand the sentiment, but, could they move him? I wouldn't say it's impossible. I'm not saying that. But it's not going to be easy to do. But if they could find a way to move that money, they would really find themselves in a much more enviable cap situation, even with some retention. So, yeah, we went from thinking he was going to be this long-time massive goal scorer for them to thinking, could it be the time almost up here? Comes back from injury, which might not be until sometime in February. Could it be gone by March? Sounds like the times have changed in Montreal. We'll be curious to see what the future holds. But let me know your thoughts on Laine and all the other scenarios we talked about here tonight in the comments. We'll discuss further. If you're new to the channel, make sure you subscribe and stick around. We'll keep you up to date with all the news, rumors, and analysis of all 32 NHL teams. Thanks for watching. I'll catch you next time.